What happens when a New York waitress, hiding from a dark past, is the only person in the room who understands a lie? When she serves dinner to Alessandro Salvatore, the most feared Mafia boss in the city, she overhears a $200 million scam unfolding in a language no one else understands. She has one choice: stay silent and stay safe, or speak the 4 words that will save him, and possibly end her life. This is a fake. Get ready, because this isn't just a story about a scam. It's about what happens when a ghost meets a king. The L'Ombre was a restaurant built on secrets. It existed in a pocket of Manhattan, so exclusive it didn't even have a sign. Only a single gas-lit lantern over a lacquered black door. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old money, truffles, and quiet, heavy negotiations. The carpets were so plush they absorbed all sound, and the waiters moved like ghosts, their reflections sliding over the dark panelled walls. Eleanor, known here only as Lena, was the best ghost they had. For 2 years, she had perfected the art of being invisible. She was the pale girl with the ordinary brown hair pulled into a severe bun, the girl with the downcast eyes who anticipated the need for more water before the glass was half empty, who could clear a $500 plate of foie gras without making a sound. Her invisibility was her shield, her paycheck, and her survival. Tonight, however, her shield felt thin. The air in L'Ombre was not just exclusive, it was electric. "The Salvatore party is in the Verona room," whispered Pierre, the maitre d', his face tight with anxiety. "You are assigned, Lena. Only you." Elena's heart didn't leap. It simply sank, heavy and cold. The Salvatore party. Even the name was a threat. Alessandro Salvatore. The press called him a reclusive financier. The streets called him the Capo Fantasma, the phantom boss. He was the unseen hand that moved the city's undercurrents. He didn't just own shipping lanes and construction firms. He owned politicians, judges, and, according to rumor, the souls of half the city's police force. And he was dining in her section. She nodded once, her face a perfect mask of professional calm. "Understood, Pierre." As she pushed through the kitchen doors, the steam and clatter felt like a brief return to the real world before she stepped back into the lion's den. She collected the chilled bottles of San Pellegrino and a $4,000 bottle of 1990 Romanée Conti that Alessandro demanded be waiting. When she entered the Verona room, the silence was immediate and absolute. It was a small, private alcove, dominated by a heavy mahogany table. 2 men were already seated, their expensive, ill-fitting suits screaming, "New money." They were Mr. Grayson, a man with a damp handshake and darting eyes, and Mr. Thorne, who was silent, built like a brick wall, and stared at his empty plate as if it had insulted him. Then the door opened, and the room's temperature dropped. Alessandro Salvatore entered. He was not what she expected. He wasn't a brutish thug from a movie. He was tall, dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit so perfectly tailored it looked like a natural extension of his body. His black hair was touched with silver at the temples, and his eyes, a startling, icy blue, missed nothing. He moved with a lethal, predatory grace. He wasn't just in the room, he commanded it. With him were his 2 shadows, Marcus, his consigliere, an older man with the weary face of a scholar, and Luca, his personal bodyguard, who looked like he hadn't smiled since birth. Luca's eyes met Eleanor's for one terrifying second, scanned her from head to toe in a clinical assessment of threat, and dismissed her. She was just the waitress. She was invisible. "Mr. Salvatore, a pleasure," Grayson said, standing too quickly, his voice high and thin. Alessandro didn't answer. He simply sat at the head of the table, and Luca stood behind his right shoulder, perfectly still. "Let us begin," Alessandro said. His voice was a low, smooth baritone, laced with the gravel of old-world authority. Elena moved forward. This was the moment she'd dreaded, the wine service. Her hands, usually so steady, felt distant. She presented the bottle. Alessandro glanced at the label and gave a curt, almost imperceptible nod. As she began the ritual, the uncorking, the careful pour into the decanter, the conversation began, and Eleanor retreated into her invisible shell, listening only to the rhythm of the words, not their meaning. "As we discussed," Grayson said, "this is a unique opportunity, an asset beyond value." "I am not in the business of beyond value, Mr. Grayson," Alessandro replied, his voice cold. "I am in the business of numbers. The number we discussed was 200 million. Elena's hand didn't tremble. 200 million. Indeed, a trifle for what is being offered. Grayson laughed nervously. "My associates in the Gulf, they are very particular. They don't deal in wire transfers and banknotes. They deal in history, in legacy." Grayson pushed a heavy, velvet-lined box to the center of the table. "A show of good faith, a private release. This document, Mr. Salvatore, is the key." Elena finished decanting the wine. She poured a small tasting amount for Marcus, who swirled, sniffed, and nodded. She began to move around the table, pouring for Alessandro first. Grayson, attempting to build rapport, leaned in and said something in a low voice. It was Arabic, or rather, a butchered, embarrassing attempt at it. "Al-Hadiya min al-Sheikh," Grayson managed, mangling the vowels. "A gift from the Sheikh." Alessandro's face remained stone. He clearly didn't understand the words, only the intent. But Elena understood, and as she stood by Alessandro's shoulder, a jolt went through her, so profound she almost dropped the heavy bottle. It wasn't Grayson's terrible pronunciation that shocked her. It was the quiet, contemptuous whisper that came from the other man. From Thorne. He hadn't moved, hadn't looked up from his plate, but he'd muttered just 2 words in a flawless, cutting dialect she knew as well as her own. A dialect that did not belong in a high-end deal. "Amsik al-Karuf," he whispered. "Seize the sheep." Elena froze. It was Egyptian street slang, a con man's phrase. It meant, the mark is ready to be fleeced. Her blood turned to ice. She kept pouring, her body on autopilot, but her mind was racing. This was a scam. These men were not representatives. They were predators. She finished pouring and stepped back, her heart hammering against her ribs, her mask of invisibility threatening to crack. For the next hour, Elena drifted in and out of the room, a phantom delivering plates of risotto bianco and seared scallops. Each time she entered, the tension was thicker. Grayson did all the talking, weaving a grand tapestry of lies. He spoke of a sovereign wealth fund in Dubai, of a lost collection of artifacts, and of mineral rights in a disputed territory that were unmenable by any public corporation, but could be privately acquired. The $200 million, he explained, was not a payment. It was a security deposit to unlock a vault in Geneva that held the true deeds. "This document," Grayson said, tapping the velvet box, "is the collateral. It is a 10th century Kufich manuscript, itself worth a fortune. But its real value is as a key. The Sheikh offers it to you as his partner." Alessandro Salvatore listened. He was a statue, his icy blue eyes fixed on Grayson, letting the man talk, letting him spin his web. He hadn't touched his food. "The transfer must be made tonight," Grayson urged, a sheen of sweat on his upper lip. "My associate, the Sheikh, he is a man of impulse. This window will close by midnight." "And this key," Alessandro said, his first words in half an hour. He gestured to the box. "You guarantee its authenticity?" "Absolutely," Grayson proclaimed. "Authenticated by the finest experts. It is a sacred text, a promise." Thorn, the silent partner, shifted in his chair. He was the muscle, but he was also the expert. He was the one who really knew the con. Elena returned to clear the main courses. She moved to Alessandro's side. As she reached for his untouched plate, Grayson decided to add one more flourish of his cultural expertise. He opened the velvet box. Inside, resting on satin, was a small, leather-bound page. It was beautiful, covered in thick, angular Arabic script. "A masterpiece, isn't it?" Grayson said, his voice full of false reverence. Elena's eyes flicked to the page. She was not an art expert. She was not a historian. But for 10 years of her life, she had lived in Cairo. She had spent her childhood hiding in the dusty back rooms of the Khan el-Khalili. Her father, a cultural attaché, who was more treasure hunter than diplomat. She had learned to read Kufic script before she could read English cursive. Her eyes scanned the page. It was beautiful, and it was old. But it wasn't a 10th century masterpiece. She recognized the slight hook on the Aleph character and the exaggerated curve of the nun. It was a specific style. She'd seen it before, on a piece her father had identified as a forgery from a notorious workshop. "The calligraphy is from the Al-Andalus period," Thorn said, speaking for the first time. His voice was a low rumble. "Infallible." Elena's gaze drifted from the script to the small, faded seal stamped in the bottom corner. It was a wax emblem depicting a stylized tree. Grayson was sliding a small, heavy laptop across the table. "The Geneva account is ready, Mr. Salvatore. Your transfer will authorize the release. 200 million. A simple keystroke." Alessandro looked at the document in the box. He looked at the laptop. Elena was clearing Grayson's plate. She could feel the vibration of Thorn's impatience next to her. He wanted this over. And then Thorn, believing himself safe in a room of ignorant Americans, muttered to Grayson again, his voice a low hiss of Arabic. "Yalla, al-sa'a tatakadam, akna al-ahmak, hurry up. The clock is ticking. Convince the fool." Elena's blood ran cold, but it was the seal that held her. It wasn't a palm, the symbol of a Gulf state. It was a cedar. She knew that seal. Her father had cursed that seal. It was the mark of the Cedar Triangle, a black market ring out of Beirut that specialized in creating authenticated forgeries, so perfect they could fool even the experts at Sotheby's. They didn't just fake art, they faked history. And they were dangerous. They were the reason her father... She blocked the memory. Alessandro Salvatore, the most powerful man in New York, was about to be scammed by the same ghosts who had shattered her life. He was reaching for the laptop. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Elena's mind was a whirlwind. Stay invisible. Say nothing. Walk out. This is not your fight. He is a criminal. Let him be robbed. But it wasn't about him. It was about them. It was about the arrogant smirk she could hear in Thorn's voice, the reek of lies that felt so sickeningly familiar. Alessandro's finger moved toward the enter key. She had 1 second. She turned, her tray in her hand. She had to do something. She stumbled. It was a tiny, believable lapse in grace. Her foot caught on the thick carpet leg, and she pitched forward. The silver tray clattered, and a single crystal glass of ice water flew from its surface. It did not hit the laptop. It sailed past Alessandro's shoulder and shattered on the floor. But its contents, a spray of ice-cold water, arced perfectly, spattering across the open velvet box and the priceless 10th century document. "Ah!" Grayson shrieked, jumping back. "You clumsy! I am so sorry, Elena gasped, her voice full of panic. She lunged forward with a stack of linen napkins. Mr. Salvatore, please, let me... She leaned directly over Alessandro's shoulder, dabbing frantically at the velvet box. Thorne and Grayson were on their feet, furious. Alessandro hadn't moved. He was staring at her. Elena's head was down. She was close enough now. She didn't look at him. She looked at the laptop. Under the guise of a panicked apology, she whispered, her voice so low it was barely a breath. She spoke in perfect formal Arabic, the Arabic of scholars, not of the street. La tuwakie, Saidi, hadhi wathikat muzawara. Do not sign, sir. This is a fake document. The silence that fell was not like the others. This was a dead, airless void. Thorne and Grayson had stopped yelling. They were frozen, their faces turning a sickly shade of pale. They hadn't heard what she said, but they knew what language she had used. Alessandro Salvatore did not move a muscle. Only his eyes, those chips of Antarctic ice, shifted. They moved from the waterlogged box to her face. His expression was unreadable. He replied, his own Arabic halting, the boardroom Arabic of a man who has learned just enough to negotiate oil deals. Mada kulti? What did you say? Elena knew, in that instant, there was no going back. Her invisibility was gone. She was exposed. She straightened up. She dropped the terrified waitress persona like a cloak. Her eyes, no longer downcast, met his. They were not brown, he realized. They were a deep, clear green. She switched to English, her voice as crisp and cold as the water she had spilled. I said, "Don't sign." She pointed a steady finger at the document where the water was making the ancient ink run. Real 10th century Kufich ink, made from carbon and gum Arabic, would not run. This ink, a modern chemical composite, was bleeding a faint, telltale blue. "This is a fake," she said, the words echoing the title she'd one day inspire. Grayson erupted. "This is insane! Alessandro, she's a waitress! She ruined—" "Shut up!" Alessandro commanded. He didn't shout. The words were quiet, and they slit the air. Grayson obeyed instantly. Alessandro's gaze remained locked on Eleanor. "Explain." "The ink is running," Eleanor said simply. "It's modern, but that's just the sloppy part." She pointed to the wax seal, now melting slightly from the water's contact. "That seal. You were told this was from a Dubai sovereign fund. That seal is the mark of the Cedar Triangle, a forgery ring out of Beirut. They specialized in faking Kufich and Andalusian manuscripts in the late 90s. They were frauds." She then turned her gaze to Thorne, who looked like he was about to be sick. "And him," she said, her voice dripping with the contempt she had hidden for so long. "He doesn't speak the polite, educated Arabic of a Gulf negotiator. He's been whispering to his partner in street-level Egyptian slang. Just before I spilled the water, he told Mr. Grayson to hurry up and convince the fool. You, Mr. Salvatore, are the fool." The truth landed in the room with the force of a physical blow. Thorne didn't wait. He wasn't a con man. He was the muscle. He lunged. He wasn't aiming for Elena. He was aiming for Alessandro. But he never had a chance. Luca, the bodyguard who had been a statue for 2 hours, moved. He was not a man. He was a bolt of lightning. In one fluid motion, he intercepted Thorne's lunge, blocked the small ceramic blade that had appeared in Thorne's hand, and slammed his palm into Thorne's throat. Thorne collapsed, choking, his face purple. At the same instant, Marcus, the quiet consigliere, had Mr. Grayson pinned against the wall, a small silver pistol pressed neatly against his temple. Grayson was sobbing, his fine suit ruined. It had taken less than 3 seconds. Elena hadn't even flinched. She just stood, her hands clasped behind her back, breathing evenly. The Verona room was silent again, save for Thorne's gagging. Alessandro Salvatore slowly rose from his chair. He walked around the table, his expensive shoes silent on the thick carpet. He stopped directly in front of Elena. He was a full head taller than her. He looked down at her, his blue eyes searching her face, dissecting her. He was not grateful. He was not angry. He was calculating. She had just saved him $200 million. She had unmasked a high-level con. She had revealed knowledge of international forgery rings and multiple obscure Arabic dialects. This Lena, this invisible girl, was the most dangerous person in the room. "You," he said, his voice a soft rumble. "Who the hell are you?" Elena met his gaze. "I'm the waitress who just saved you $200 million. A shadow of a smile touched Alessandro's lips, a terrifying, humorless expression. "You are," he agreed, "which means you're either a spectacular coincidence or you're a plant from a rival. Either way, you know too much." He turned to his consigliere. "Marcus, get them out of here. Use the service entrance. Mr. Thorne and Mr. Grayson have a pressing engagement in one of my warehouses." Marcus nodded, dragging the whimpering Grayson out. Luca hauled the semi-conscious Thorne up by his collar and followed. The door clicked shut. It was just Elena and Alessandro. The remnants of a $10,000 meal sat between them. "Pierre!" Alessandro called out, not raising his voice. The maître d' appeared instantly, his face ashen. "Mr. Salvatore, is everything—" "Everything is perfect," Alessandro said. "My compliments to the chef. Lena, however, will be leaving with me. She's not feeling well. Have her coat brought." "Sir." Pierre looked at Elena, confused. Elena's blood ran cold. This was it. She wasn't being thanked. She was being taken. "It's all right, Pierre," Elena said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'll get my things." "No," Alessandro said, placing a gentle proprietary hand on her elbow. His touch was electric, a brand. "Luca will get your things. You're coming with me. Now. For your protection." It was not a request. It was a command. As he guided her out of the Verona room, past the stunned staff and the oblivious diners, Elena realized her mistake. She had run from the wolves in Beirut, only to leap into the cage of the lion in New York. Her old life was over. Her new one, as the property of Alessandro Salvatore, had just begun. The ride from Lombre was silent and terrifying. Elena was seated in the back of a black, armored Bentley, a car so quiet it felt like a sensory deprivation chamber. Alessandro sat opposite her, not next to her, observing her as a scientist might observe a volatile, unknown element. Luca drove, and Marcus rode shotgun. The windows were tinted so dark that the glittering lights of Manhattan were reduced to blurry, distant smudges. Elena's mind was working frantically, sorting through options, escape routes, and identities. She had a go bag under the floorboards of her tiny apartment. It had a fake passport, Canadian this time, $10,000 in cash, and a burner phone. It was useless to her now. They weren't heading to a warehouse. They weren't driving to the docks. They crossed the bridge and drove to a part of the city that didn't exist on maps, a sprawling, high-walled compound hidden in plain sight, masquerading as a private historical trust. The car passed through 2 sets of wrought-iron gates and stopped in a cobblestone courtyard. Alessandro exited the car and simply waited for her. He didn't grab her. He didn't threaten. He just expected. Elena stepped out. The air was cool. "Welcome to my home," he said, as if she were a guest for dinner. The home was a mansion, a dark stone edifice that looked like it had been stolen from the hills of Sicily and dropped in the middle of New York. Inside, it was not the gaudy palace of a new money criminal, It was like l'ombre, all dark wood, priceless tapestries, and heavy ancestral silence. "Luca," Alessandro said, "show Miss, whatever her name is, to the Azure suite. Give her what she needs, and stay outside her door." He turned to Elena. "We will talk in the morning. Do not try to leave. The doors are locked, the windows are bulletproof, and the grounds are monitored. You are perfectly safe. From everyone but me." He walked away, disappearing down a long, shadowed hall. The Azure suite was not a bedroom. It was an apartment. It was larger than her entire building. It had a 4-poster bed, a fireplace, a walk-in closet stocked with new, designer clothes in her approximate size, and a bathroom made of white marble. It was the most beautiful prison she had ever seen. Elena locked the door, a pointless gesture she knew, and leaned against it, her body finally succumbing to the tremors she had held back. She had blown her cover. After 2 years of meticulous, paranoid hiding, she had been exposed, not by the men she was running from, but by the one man in New York she should have avoided at all costs. She stripped off her waitress uniform, the Lena costume, and left it in a heap. She took a shower so hot it nearly scalded her, trying to wash off the night. She put on a pair of silk pajamas from the closet and sat by the window. She could see Luca, standing like a gargoyle on the terrace below, his eyes pointedly away from her window. Sleep was impossible. Her past came flooding back, the smell of jasmine and diesel from the Cairo streets, her father's study, filled with forbidden texts, the men with the cedar tree signet rings, the phone call that told her to run, to become a ghost, to trust no one. She had failed. The sun rose, painting the sky in shades of grey and bloody orange. At 7 a.m. sharp, there was a soft knock. Elena opened it. A young woman in a maid's uniform stood there with a tray of coffee and pastries. "Mr. Salvatore will see you in the library in 1 hour," the maid said, not meeting her eyes. Elena drank the coffee, black. She dressed in a pair of the provided black trousers and a cashmere sweater. She felt like an imposter. She brushed out her hair, letting it fall past her shoulders. The severe bun was gone. When she entered the library, guided by Luca, Alessandro was waiting. He was dressed in a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled up, revealing tanned, powerful forearms. He was not the capofantasma this morning. He looked like a CEO, a ruthless one. The library was 2 stories, filled with thousands of leather-bound books. Marcus was there, standing by a desk, holding a slim folder. "Good morning," Alessandro said. "Do you have a name? Or shall I keep calling you Waitress?" "Elena," she said. "Elena, a beautiful name. It's a shame it's a lie." Elena tensed. "It's my name." "Is it?" Alessandro took the folder from Marcus. "We were busy last night, while you were resting. We ran your face through every database we have. We ran your fingerprints from the wine glass you held." He tossed the folder on the desk. It was empty. "Nothing," he said, a note of frustrated admiration in his voice. "Lena, the waitress at l'Ombre, was hired 2 years ago with a driver's license and a social security number that, well, they exist, but the person they belong to doesn't. No school records, no credit history, no past. You are a ghost." He leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. "So I ask you again, Elena the ghost, who are you, and what were you doing in that room?" Elena raised her chin. "I told you, I was a waitress, and the Arabic, the knowledge of 90s-era Beirut forgery rings. I studied," she lied weakly. Alessandro laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "You studied? You are a brilliant liar, Elena, but not that brilliant. Last night you saved me from a $200 million loss. That buys you one, and only one, chance to tell me the truth. If you lie to me again, I will hand you to Luca, and he will find out who you are, and you will not enjoy his methods. Do you understand?" Elena looked at Luca, who was watching her with dead, patient eyes. She believed him. She took a breath. "I can't tell you. It's not. You don't know who you're dealing with." "Oh?" Alessandro's interest was piqued. "You mean Thorne and Grayson? They are currently explaining themselves. Thorne, it turns out, is very talkative when properly motivated. He works for a group. He calls them Al-Assad, the Lion." Elena flinched, a tiny involuntary movement, but Alessandro saw it. "No," she whispered. "Not Al-Assad. Al-Sakr. The Falcon," Alessandro corrected himself, his eyes lighting up. "He had her. The Falcon. Yes, you know them." Elena sagged. The jig was up. "You call them the Falcon. I've heard them called the Scimitar. They are the ones I'm running from." Alessandro absorbed her words, his expression shifting from suspicion to intense, calculating focus. He waved a dismissive hand. Luca and Marcus exited the library, closing the heavy oak doors behind them, encasing Alessandro and Elena in a soundproof tomb of literature. "You're running from them," Alessandro stated. "It wasn't a question. The men who tried to scam me are the men you are hiding from. That is a very interesting coincidence." "It wasn't a coincidence," Elena said, her voice low. She was tired. The adrenaline was gone, leaving only a bone-deep weariness. "They operate in the world of high-value antiquities and historical assets. That's their hunting ground. It was my father's world." She walked to the window, looking out over the manicured, prison-like garden. "My name is Elena Rostova. My father, he was Dr. Mikhail Rostov. He was a cultural attaché at the embassy in Cairo, but that was his cover. He was an antiquities expert, the best in the world. Museums, governments, private collectors, they all used him to authenticate priceless artifacts." Alessandro listened, his stillness unnerving. "About 3 years ago, he was approached by them. The Scimitar. They wanted him to authenticate a forgery, a massive one, a lost charter they discovered, which would have given them false claim to a massive oil reserve. It was $1 billion con. My father, he was an academic. He was proud. He refused." She paused, the memory still sharp. "They don't take no for an answer. They framed him. They manufactured evidence that he was the forger, that he was the one trying to defraud the Egyptian government. They ruined his name. But that wasn't enough. They killed him," Alessandro said. "Yes," Elena whispered. "They staged it as a suicide. But before they did, he called me. He told me to run. He said they wouldn't just kill him. They would come for me. He had a ledger, a black book where he documented every dealing he ever had, including all his research on their operations, their forgeries, their contacts, their front companies. He told me he'd hidden it. And they think you have it," Alessandro concluded. "They think I have it," she confirmed, turning to face him. "So I ran. I disappeared. I burned my identity, used every skill my father taught me, the languages, the history, to become someone else, to become no one. I became Lena, the invisible waitress, hiding in the one city big enough to get lost in." She looked him in the eye. "Until last night, when I saw that seal, the Cedar Triangle. That was one of their front groups. I knew it. I saw them trying to pull the same kind of scam they use to ruin my father. I couldn't let it happen. I couldn't stay invisible." The library was silent. Alessandro stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time. Not as a waitress, not as a con artist, but as a survivor. A woman who had been through the fire and come out as tempered steel. "Thorn and Grayson," he said finally. "They were just tools. Low level. Yes, they were disposable. The scimitar has operatives everywhere. In banks, auction houses, shipping. They are a syndicate, just like yours. Only they deal in lies, not whatever it is you deal in." A flicker of respect entered Alessandro's eyes. "My world and theirs just collided, Elena. They didn't just try to steal 200 million. They tried to steal from me, Alessandro Salvatore. They brought their war to my city, and now they've brought their number one target," he gestured to her, "into my home." He pushed off the desk and began to pace, his energy filling the room. He was no longer a CEO. He was the Capo Fantasma, and his territory had been invaded. "They failed their con," he reasoned, thinking aloud. "They will know why it failed. They will know someone intervened. They will be looking for the person who spoke Arabic and identified their forgery. They'll be looking for me," Elena said. "They'll trace it back to the restaurant. They'll find Lena." "But Lena has vanished," Alessandro countered, "along with her boss, Mr. Salvatore. They will assume I took you, which I did." He stopped in front of her. "Which means they are now my enemy. And you are my asset. You know their methods. You know their symbols. You are the key to dismantling them." Elena's heart hammered. What are you proposing?" "This is no longer your gilded cage, Elena. It's your fortress. You are under my protection, and you will work for me." "Work for you? How?" "You will be my consultant, my personal interpreter in this new war. You will use everything your father taught you. You will help me hunt them down. We will find this ledger, and we will expose them from the ground up." "And in return?" she asked, her voice shaking. "In return," Alessandro said, his voice dropping, "I will give you the one thing you want more than anything." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. He was dangerously, overwhelmingly present. "I will give you revenge." The air crackled between them. This was a new deal, a different kind of cage. He was offering her a sword. "They will hunt you," he warned. "They will try to kill you." "They've been trying to kill me for 2 years," Elena replied, her voice hardening. "The only difference is now, I'm ready to hunt them back." A slow, genuine smile spread across Alessandro's face. It transformed him, made him look almost human. "Good, because I'm not just going to give you revenge, Elena. I'm going to give you justice, the Salvatore kind." The dynamic in the mansion shifted overnight. Elena was no longer a prisoner. She was a partner. A closely guarded, high-value partner. She was moved from the guest suite to a room in Alessandro's private wing. Luca was no longer her jailer. He was her shadow, assigned to protect her life with his own. Alessandro's war room was a high-tech bunker beneath the library. For the first time, Elena saw the true scope of the Salvatore operation. It wasn't just thugs and construction. It was a global intelligence network, hackers, analysts, and informants. They brought in the half-broken Thorn. Elena, standing beside Alessandro, looked at the man who had called her boss a fool. He was terrified of Alessandro, but he was petrified of her. "Ask him," Alessandro commanded. "Ask him about the scimitar." Elena stepped forward. She didn't use English. She didn't use formal Arabic. She used the same hard, gutter-level Egyptian slang he had used. "Tickle him," she snapped. "Speak. Who is your contact in New York?" Thorn's eyes went wide. To hear this language from this woman, standing next to this man, it broke him. He confessed everything. The Scimitar's New York operation was run by a man they only knew as Silas. He was an American, an ex-curator from a major museum, fired for indiscretions. He was the one who vetted the forgeries. He was the one who chose the marks. "He's planning a new deal," Thorne choked out. "An auction, private, at the old Whitfield Gallery. Next week. It's how they're laundering the new forgeries." After Thorne was dragged away, Alessandro and Elena were alone in the war room. "Silas," Alessandro mused. "Marcus, find me this Silas. Find me everything." He turned to Elena. "You did well. You have steel in your voice." "I learned it from men like him," she said. The days that followed were a blur of adrenaline. Elena lived and breathed the hunt. She worked alongside Marcus, sifting through data, identifying shell corporations and bank accounts tied to the names from her father's memories. She taught Alessandro's men the difference between a real antiquity and a high-end fake. She and Alessandro worked side by side, long into the night, fueled by coffee and a shared, obsessive energy. She saw the man behind the capo. He was brilliant, strategic, and utterly ruthless. He, in turn, saw her. He saw her intelligence, her courage, and the deep, abiding wound from her past. One evening they were reviewing shipping manifests in the library. "You're not just doing this for your father," he said, not looking up from a file. "He was my father," she said defensively. "He's been gone for 3 years. You're not just running from something. You're running to something." "What is it?" Elena hesitated. "I'm running to be free, to stop looking over my shoulder, to have a life that is my own." Alessandro finally looked up, his blue eyes intense. "Freedom isn't given, Elena. It's taken. You're taking it back, one day at a time." "I respect that." The small, grudging admission felt more intimate than a kiss. The air between them was thick with an unspoken, dangerous chemistry. He was the dark night protector she never knew she needed. She was the brilliant, unexpected light in his dark world. The Scimitar, however, did not remain idle. They knew their $200 million con had failed. They knew their men, Grayson and Thorne, had vanished. And they knew a waitress was involved. The attack came on a Tuesday. Alessandro had insisted Elena get some air. They were walking in the walled garden, Luca 10 paces behind, when Elena felt it. A flicker of light. It wasn't a camera. It was a glint. "Sniper!" she screamed, tackling Alessandro Salvatore, the most feared man in the city, to the ground. She was a second too late. A high-velocity round cracked the air where Alessandro's head had been, shattering a stone urn behind them. "Down!" Luca roared, drawing his weapon and returning fire toward a distant rooftop. Another shot, and another. They were pinned. Alessandro, recovering from the shock of being tackled by her, reacted instantly. He didn't run for cover. He covered her. He rolled, pulling her beneath his own larger, stronger body, shielding her from the gunfire. "You're okay," he growled in her ear, his voice a low vibration against her body. "They won't get through me." She was pressed against his chest, her face buried in his suit, which smelled of expensive cologne and ozone. She could feel the steady, powerful thump of his heart against her cheek. He was completely calm. Luca was on his comms, roaring orders. "Hostile east wall! All units converge!" More shots rained down, chipping the stone balustrade they were hiding behind. "You saved my life," Alessandro murmured, his breath hot on her ear. "We're not safe yet," she panted, her terror mixing with a strange, intoxicating rush. "We will be." A volley of gunfire erupted from the house as Alessandro's security team engaged the sniper. The shooting stopped. After a long, tense silence, Luca's voice came over the comms. "Target neutralized, boss. The perimeter is secure." Alessandro did not move for a long moment. He just stayed there, shielding her, breathing her in. Finally, he rolled off her, standing up and pulling her to her feet in one smooth motion. His suit was covered in dirt. There was a cut on his cheek, but his eyes were on her. They were blazing with something new. Not just respect, not just intrigue, possession. "You're fast," he said, his thumb coming up to brush a speck of dirt from her cheek. His touch lingered. "I've been running for a long time," she whispered, her body trembling from the impact. "No more running," he said, his voice a vow. "From now on, we are the ones who hunt." He didn't let her go. He kept his hand on her arm, guiding her back inside, his touch a possessive, protective brand. The line between them had been irrevocably crossed. She had saved his life, and he had shielded hers. They were bound, not just by a deal, but by scars. The plan was audacious, and it was hers. The Whitfield Gallery was not just a gallery. It was a bank, a vault, and a fortress. The guest list for Silas's private auction, now just an hour away, was a global roster of sharks in bespoke suits, billionaires with hollow morals, and black market dealers who traded in history. Elena stood in the center of her suite in Alessandro's mansion, her reflection staring back at her from a floor-to-ceiling mirror. She was no longer Lena the waitress, a shadow in a bun and apron. She was not Elena the ghost, running from a past that wasn't real. Dressed in a floor-length, emerald green gown, the exact color of her eyes, she was a queen. The dress was a weapon, simple, severe, and stunning. Her hair, no longer hidden, fell in dark waves. The door opened. Alessandro entered, and for the first time, Elena saw him pause. He was in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, the unofficial uniform of the powerful. But his eyes were on her. He drank her in, a slow, appreciative, and utterly possessive appraisal. "Mikhail Rostov's daughter," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Or just Elena," she replied, her voice steady, though her heart was a hummingbird in her chest. He walked to her, holding a black velvet box. He opened it. Inside, resting on white satin, was a river of diamonds, a necklace so bright it seemed to steal the light from the room. "To complete the costume," he said. She turned, lifting her hair. He stepped behind her. His fingers, large and warm, brushed the bare skin of her neck as he fastened the clasp. The diamonds were cold, a stark contrast to his touch, which was electric. He didn't move away. His hands rested on her bare shoulders, his presence a heavy, protective weight. "Are you afraid?" he asked, his voice a low rumble in her ear. "Terrified," she admitted, meeting his gaze in the mirror. "But not of you. Not anymore." "Good," he said, "because you are not walking in there alone." He turned her around, his gaze intense. "This ends tonight, Elena. Whatever happens, whatever he says, I will not let them harm you." He leaned in, and his lips brushed hers. It was not a kiss of passion, not yet. It was a promise, a seal, a brand. The Whitfield Gallery was a gleaming, cold cathedral of white marble and glass. The air was hushed, the only sound the clinking of champagne flutes and the murmur of vast fortunes. Silas met them in a private viewing room on the third floor, a sterile white box dominated by a single, spotlighted sculpture. Silas, the ex-curator, was slick and handsome, with the easy smile and dead eyes of a sociopath. "Miss Rostova," he smiled, gliding towards them. "A distinct and unexpected pleasure. And your associate." He gave Alessandro a dismissive glance, mistaking him for a brutish bodyguard, a wealthy gorilla on a leash. It was a fatal underestimation. "Let's get this over with, Silas," Elena said, her voice laced with a tremor she didn't have to fake. Of course. Nerves are to be expected, he soothed, his condescension thick. The merchandise? With a steady hand, Eleanor produced the single, aged page, a brilliant forgery created by Alessandro's own network, detailing 2 of the scimitar's known buyers. Silas took it, his eyes lighting up with greed. He examined it under a loupe, his smile widening. Impressive. Your father's work, no doubt. The man was a true artist. He looked up. My client will be very pleased. He's just arriving now. The door behind them hissed open. But it wasn't a client. It was 2 of the scimitar's guards, large men in dark suits, their hands inside their jackets. Alessandro didn't flinch, but Elena felt his entire body go rigid beside her. A trap, Alessandro murmured. A reclamation, Silas corrected, his slimy persona vanishing, replaced by cold malice. You didn't really think I'd let you leave, did you? You've been a ghost for 2 years, Elena, a loose end. We've been looking for you for a long time. He stepped closer. The ledger. The real one. Where is it? Right here, Alessandro said. He didn't look at Silas. He looked at Elena. He tapped the small emerald pin on his lapel, a gift from her, matching her dress. It was a microphone. Luca. Now. For a split second. Nothing. Silas smirked. No one is coming to save. The world ended. The gallery's fire alarms blared, a deafening shriek. The lights cut out, plunging the room into darkness, only to be replaced by the pulsing, chaotic flashes of red emergency strobes. Outside the room, Elena could hear screams and the crash of glass. Silas, in a panic, lunged for Elena. Get her! He never touched her. Alessandro moved. He was not a man. He was a shadow, a force of nature. In the flashing red light, Elena saw a tableau of violence. Alessandro intercepted Silas's lunge with a brutal, efficient strike to the throat that sent Silas sprawling, choking. One guard raised his weapon. Alessandro was already moving, disarming him with a sharp crack of bone. The second guard turned, but Luca was suddenly there, having entered through a side door, a silent, dark angel of death. It was not a brawl. It was an execution. In less than 10 seconds, the room was still. The alarms were silent, cut off at the source. The only sound was Silas, wheezing on the white marble floor. Alessandro stood over him, straightening his tuxedo cuffs. He was untouched. He looked at the gasping man, his face a mask of cold fury. "The war is over," Alessandro growled. You idiot," Silas choked, blood flecking his lips. He started to laugh, a wet, rattling sound that turned Elena's blood to ice. "You think this was about 200 million? About you? You were just a client, a mark." His eyes, wild with hatred, found Eleanor. "It was always about her." "Me?" Eleanor stepped forward, her voice a whisper. "The ledger." Silas coughed, his laughter turning manic. "You're trying to clear your father's name. You poor, pathetic girl. You've been running around, hiding like a rat, all to protect the good name of Mikhail Rostov." He spat a bloody laugh. "That ledger doesn't clear him. It implicates him." "Liar," Elena whispered, the word hollow. "It's the truth," Silas shrieked, energized by his final, terrible act of vengeance. "Your father wasn't framed, you stupid girl. He was a partner. He was our best forger. He got greedy, tried to double-cross us, so we suicided him. That ledger? It has every transaction he ever made. He's the one who ran the Cedar Triangle. He's the one who built the scimitar." The words were like acid, dissolving the very foundation of her world. Her father, her hero, the man whose memory she was avenging. "He was a monster," Silas gasped. "And you're the one who believed his lies. He's the devil, And you've been protecting his legacy." Elena couldn't breathe. The room tilted. Her father, her quest, her entire life. It was a lie, a cheap, cruel forgery. She wasn't just crying. She was unmaking, shattering from the inside out. Alessandro watched her. His face was hard, unreadable. He saw her break. He looked down at Silas, who was still grinning. He ended the confrontation with a single, sharp, final movement. The door burst open, and Luca and his team flooded in, weapons drawn. "We're clear, boss. The gallery is locked down. We have his network." But Alessandro and Elena were in their own world. The tactical victory was hollow in the face of her personal, emotional desolation. He walked to her. She was staring at nothing, tears streaming down her face, the diamond necklace a mockery of her father's lies. He put his hands on her shoulders, his grip firm, grounding her, forcing her to look at him. "Elena, look at me." Her green eyes, shattered and lost, met his. "He's gone," Alessandro said, his voice firm but not unkind. "That man is dead. The story you told yourself is dead. The lies are dead." She choked on a sob, and he pulled her into him. He didn't hold her like she was glass. He held her like she was an anchor, holding her fast as her world dissolved. He pressed her face into his suit, his hand moving to the back of her head, shielding her. "Your father's legacy is his," he said, his voice a low vibration against her ear. "His sins are not yours. Do you hear me?" She nodded, clinging to him. "You are not your father's daughter," he said, pulling her back just enough to look at her. "You are not Lena, the waitress. You are not a ghost." He tilted her chin up, his gaze intense, possessive, and for the first time, protective. "You are Elena, and you are mine." She didn't pull away. She didn't argue. She leaned into him, her past finally dead, burned away by the truth. She was free. Free of the past, free of the lies, and free of the need to run. She had traded her cage of fear for a fortress, a life at the side of the only man who saw her for who she truly was. She was no longer invisible. She was the woman who had saved the Don, and in the ashes of her father's lies, she had finally found herself. She spoke the truth and lost her past, only to find her future. Elena's story proves that sometimes the greatest scams are the ones we tell ourselves. She thought she was avenging a hero, but she was really just freeing herself. Now she's no longer a ghost. She's a queen in a new kind of kingdom, and her war is just beginning. What did you think of Eleanor's choice? Was Alessandro her savior, or just a new kind of captor? If you loved this story of drama, twists, and dark romance, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that sometimes you have to burn down your old life to build a new one. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the shadows.